Hi everyone and welcome back to Tennis Time. In this video I'm going to preview the semi-finals between Diego Schwartzman and Rafa Nadal in the first semi-final, and the other one is going to be Stefanos Tsitsipas playing Novak Djokovic. So thinking back of the previous preview video, the prediction video I did on the quarterfinals, I'm feeling relatively good about it. From the 4 quarterfinals, I've picked just one incorrectly. That was the Team Schwarzman match, and for some time in the 4th set I had the impression, especially when they got to the tiebreak, that it's team who is going to win that. But in the end Diego was just too strong, running everything down, and in the end being the stronger player mentally and physically, of course. Okay, but let's have a look first at the semi-final lineups. So I made an interesting statistic here. I've looked at the last 6 Grand Slam tournaments, semis and finals. Normally I have the impression that when we get to semi-final stages of a slam, that's probably the best day of a slam, because it's not the finals yet and players somehow manage to bring their A game really in the semis. It's not the final. They are not that overwhelmed by nerves, and they bring their A game out. So that's why we have the best tennis. But lately, if you look back at the last 6 slams, somehow things changed, in the sense that in the last 4 slam finals we had a 5-setter, so we really treated the fantastic tennis in those matches. The 2019 final, Federer Djokovic 5 sets, 13-12 in the 5th. US Open final 5 sets 2019, where Nadal has beaten Medvedev coming back from 2 sets to love down and making it 2 sets all. Australian Open final, Djokovic team 5 sets, team leading 2 sets to 1, Djokovic winning in the end. And now just recently the 2020 US Open final. Maybe it was not one of the prettiest matches, but it was definitely one of the most dramatic ones, since team has managed to get back from 2 sets to love down against Zverev and win it in the 5th set tiebreak. So interestingly enough, we didn't have any 5-setters lately. The last time it happened, with the exception of this year's US Open semi-final at the French Open, was last year when Djokovic was playing team in a 5-setter. It's clay court, it's a heavy court. We have players playing at their peak, at their highest level, so I'm really hoping to have a super exciting French Open semi-final day. Okay, but enough about that. Let's dig in and let's have a look on Schwartzman's route. So if you've seen my previous video where I've talked about Schwartzman's route to the quarterfinals, you know he's not dropped a set until the quarters. He had that epic match against Team I just was referring to just a minute ago. Schwarzman in the end being the more consistent of the two. I think he was physically stronger and fitter. Team had in his previous match in the 4th round an epic against Gaston, and he was 2 sets to love up. Then he lost that lead and they went into a 5th set. It was a long, grueling match. I think that took just a little bit too much out of him. Not that in the first 4 sets you didn't have the impression that Team wasn't hanging in there physically. But in the end, in the 5th set, halfway through when Schwarzman went up 4-2, he sort of knew and felt that, okay, this is really done. He will not be able to come back. On the other hand, Nadal, so he had a flawless performance, let's put it like that, up until now. He's the guy who spent the least time on court. Out of all 4 players, just the 10 hours and 4 minutes. Schwarzman is the one who spent the most time of the 4 semi-final contenders. He's been a little bit over 13.5 hours, which he spent on court, and out of that was 5 hours and 8 minutes against Team. So I'm pretty sure, even if before the semi-final Schwarzman has 2 days off and more time to rest, I think that's golden for him, that will help him, but I'm still thinking that that may have a little bit of an effect on Schwarzman's potential performance in the semi-finals. No matter how fit you are, you're gonna feel a 5-hour, 8-minute match in your legs. Nadal, as I also talked about it in the previous video, he wasn't really tested in the first 4 rounds. On the other hand, he had his first test in the quarterfinals against Jannik Sinner. Jannik Sinner was very impressive and put out Sasha Zverev in the 4th round. So this Nadal-Sinner matchup was an interesting one. Everybody was talking about the fact that this year's French Open is very different compared to all the other French Opens. There's definitely not going to be any heat. The balls are not going to jump up high because Nadal cannot use his spin and generate that big of a spin, especially on his forehand. It's not going to be that uncomfortable for his opponents to attack or to counter his forehand shots, because the spin is just not that as effective. Having said that, he was still very convincing, at least in my opinion, in all of his matches. The match against Sinner was important, and I think he needed that before he went into the semis. He really needed a good test, and he's got it, especially in the first 2 sets, because Sinner was just totally unafraid of Rafa. He was really going for his shots strongly, and you had the impression at the beginning of the match that Nadal was a little bit nervous, like he knew what was at stake, and he was playing a young up-and-coming player, and he didn't want to lose to that guy. And I think that's completely normal and completely natural. On the other hand, you didn't feel like the match was a free flow, at least from Nadal's perspective. He was making sure to win the most important points. He was trying to make sure not to make too many errors, and he was somehow trying to feel out Sinner, which he eventually managed to do, because Sinner broke him actually at 5-all in the first set, and he was serving for the first set to take it 7-5. And that was the first time when Nadal really turned it on, and he started to return a little bit better, making the second shot for Sinner a little bit more difficult. And he was he was the guy who read the key moments in the tiebreak better, and he's beaten Sinner in the first set tiebreak. In the second set, Sinner got a little bit of treatment. You didn't know if he was okay or not. Something was up with his knee, I think, or around the knee area. But he was still moving well, and he was hitting the ball still very hard. He was not afraid of Rafa's forehand. He was that was still in the first set, but once Rafa was actually surprised that Sinner continuously went back with his backhand to Nadal's lefty forehand. It was very strange. He was really not afraid of anything coming from Rafa. On the other hand, Sinner was a break up in the second, and Rafa made sure to get that break back immediately, and then eventually he was the one taking a break lead and taking the second set. In the third set, it was a different story. You had the impression that Nadal really did relax, and he was very comfortable with his shot making, and the decision process was very, very much okay now. So he was really sure that what he was doing is going to be successful. And maybe if he missed a few points or Sinner won a few, he was not discouraged at all, and he knew that this is now his match, and he was really in the groove. And this is the kind of Nadal who can win a match against anybody on a clay court, even if it's a slow clay court. But the question is he going to have that free flow ability when he plays potentially in the final, if he passes Schwarzman first, of course. I think against Schwarzman, now talking about that lineup, it's going to be very important for him to sort of continue the form he's shown in the last set against Sinner. He has to be better with his forehand than he's been 2 weeks ago when he was playing Schwarzman in Rome. Schwarzman winning and beating him 6-2, 7-5. So as you can see, this is the head-to-head record. It's overwhelming, or it seems at least overwhelming for Rafa. He's won the first 9 encounters and losing just the last time against Schwarzman in that Rome clay Masters 1000 quarterfinal. They've played many times on clay before, and okay, Nadal has won the majority of that as well because he's obviously 4-1 up, but Schwarzman is the kind of guy who can make life difficult for you. He can make it really uncomfortable for Nadal. He's a fantastic returner, especially if Nadal's first serve is a little bit off, which could happen. That was the case in Rome. Then Schwarzman can really capitalize on Nadal's second serves. They've actually met at the 2018 French Open, where he sort of was out-hitting and out-playing Nadal for a set and a half. Then the rain came, and the next day Nadal turned it around and completely washed Schwarzman off the court. It was 4-6, 6-3, 6-2 and 6-2 in that one. So putting all history aside, because it's probably not that relevant anymore, we rather need to look at how they've been playing at this event, at this tournament, because it's a little bit different than how usually the French Open is. I think both players are doing really well. It was important for Schwarzman in his quest against Thiem to overcome that mental barrier that he may not be able to close out games and sets, because he's missed that many times. He probably should have won the second set, he probably should have won the third set, he probably should have won a lot earlier the fourth set, and he didn't. But in the end, in the final set, he really delivered, and I think that was important for his confidence. He's beaten Nadal prior in Rome, as I just mentioned that, so he's going to have a lot of confidence going into that match. On the other hand, I think Nadal is also drawing a lot on his own past history against Schwarzman. He's been very dominant over Schwarzman, so he has a 9-1 lead, despite the fact that he's lost to Schwarzman now in Rome. The fact that he had such a good match against Sinner, I think that's definitely going to help him, and he's definitely going to be looking out for a payback, sort of, because he lost to Schwarzman in Rome. It happened a few times before in the last 3 years. He lost to Thiem in Rome in 2017, that was also in the quarterfinals, and he's crushed Thiem at the French Open in the semis, so it's a similar situation. He's lost to Thiem, I think, in 2018 again, in the Madrid Masters this time, and he's completely crushed Thiem again in the French Open final. Okay, maybe a complete crush is too strong of a word, but it was still 3 straight sets. So now, I think if I would have to pick, I would put down Nadal as the overwhelming favorite. I'm inclined to go 3 or 4 sets. I cannot decide on the 3 or 4. I'm just leaving it at that. Okay, so moving on, Djokovic against Tsitsipas, the next lineup. So just talking about maybe a little bit about the quarterfinal against Carreño Busta. It was not that convincing of a performance if you take it overall, not like his previous 4 matches. He wasn't moving well, and he seemed to be stiff and hindered somehow in the first set, which he's lost against Busta. In the second set, somehow he managed to free himself up, and he played a lot better. was more the Djokovic we've seen in the first 4 matches, but it still was not. I mean, something wasn't really right, or at least that's the impression I had. He may have had a bad practice session. He was stiff, whatever. I'm not sure that this is something he's going to carry over to the semi-final, and I'm sure he will be very much on Tsitsipas's case. He spent 10 hours and 42 minutes on court. Tsitsipas 10 hours 21 minutes, a lot less than Djokovic, although he played in the first round 5-setter against Munar. Then he was very convincing against Rublev. When he managed to turn that 3-5 deficit around in the first set, he was very strong afterwards, and Rublev was sort of a little bit gone, I had the impression, in that second and third set. Taking a look at the history between Nadal and between Djokovic and Tsitsipas, Tsitsipas had a 2-1 lead against him, but he lost the last 2 encounters against Djokovic rather convincingly. I sort of have the impression that Djokovic has managed to figure out how to play Tsitsipas. And if he's on, then Tsitsipas is probably going to be in a very, very tough spot. Tsitsipas is a guy who is still young, and he needs to have a confidence level. And he may have it when he steps out on that court at the semi-final stage at the French Open, and he may perform supremely well. But the chances that he will do so are a little bit lower than that he will. At least that's my take on it. I think Djokovic wants this badly, and the only time they played on clay was in the 2019 Madrid Masters in the final, where Djokovic won rather convincingly 3-4, and that was a match which Tsitsipas was playing just after the semi-final where he stood out Nadal. That was the time when he's beaten Nadal for the first time in his life, and especially on clay, when Nadal is at home. So that was a big deal. I don't think he was completely up for the task to play Nadal and Djokovic back to back. But I think the path he's had so far at the French Open was very good. And I think he will be able to win, and or at least he has the belief that he can win that match. On the other hand, I think the first set is going to be really key. If Tsitsipas is going to feel that he is in there and he can make inroads and he can have a free flow of his shots and it's working well, then Djokovic can be in trouble. But if the first set goes away rather quickly, or even if it's a contest but it goes away from him, I think Djokovic is definitely the one who's going to be the one who's going to win. So I'm picking Djokovic in this one in 4 sets. Okay, I would really love to see or read your thoughts, your take on this. Let me know what you think. Please, in case you haven't subscribed, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to see all the new content that I'm bringing out. Okay, hope you enjoyed. See you next time.